Bueno, muy buenos días para todos y todas las personas que se han podido conectar para este evento. Quería empezar por desearles a todos y todas un muy feliz Día Mundial del Medio Ambiente. Como saben, estamos pasando por una crisis que ha sido muy compleja, la más compleja que nos ha tocado vivir, estoy seguro, a todos los que estamos ahí conectados. Está mostrando el COVID mucha fragilidad que sabíamos estaba, pero creo que está poniéndola de manifiesto de una manera mucho más fuerte, sobre todo los problemas sociales que tenemos, fragilidad económica y sobre todo está yo creo que haciéndonos reflexionar mucho y debe ser parte de lo que hagamos todos como sociedad hoy, Día Mundial del Medio Ambiente, a un normal, sino a colectivamente como sociedad crear ciudades, países, comunidades que sean resilientes en lo social, en lo económico y en lo ambiental. Por eso vamos a tener hoy un panel de lujo que nos va a ayudar con su participación a entender cómo están viendo desde diferentes ópticas el crear un nuevo normal, una recuperación y atención a la urgencia del COVID, en la cual la naturaleza, el medio ambiente tiene que ser un eje fundamental para ese nuevo contrato social que nos ayude a todos en este momento. Me dicen que les recuerde a todos que tenemos interpretación para los que lo pueden ver abajo de la pantalla. Y sin más, también me recuerdan que por favor luego vayan colocando las preguntas en el chat. Primero que todo me gustaría dar la bienvenida al ministro de Medio Ambiente y Energía de Costa Rica, Carlos Manuel Rodríguez, que ha hecho un gran esfuerzo de conectarse hoy con nosotros desde un parque nacional en Costa Rica. Él nos contará ahora exactamente dónde está. Quería no solo darle la bienvenida a Carlos Manuel, que ha sido un gran líder en la región, un gran ministro, un gran amigo, y felicitarlo por su reciente elección como nuevo presidente, CEO del GEF, del Fondo Mundial Ambiental. Carlos Manuel, esto es un reconocimiento muy importante a Costa Rica, América Latina y el Caribe por su rol en el mundo en el tema de sostenibilidad y a todos los países en vía de desarrollo. Estamos muy contentos de tu nominación y esperamos muy pronto tenerte en Washington para trabajar conjuntamente. Bienvenido, Carlos Manuel.
Sí, muy buenos días. Muchísimas gracias, don Juan Pablo Bonilla. Muchas gracias a todos los que nos acompañan esta mañana. Y primero y muy importante, felicitarlos a todos en el Día Mundial del Medio Ambiente, a todos aquellos que nos escuchan a lo largo y ancho de América Latina y el Caribe, pues también un abrazo, y a aquellos que están fuera de esta nosotros. En donde celebraremos hoy con el señor presidente de la República no solamente el Día Mundial del Ambiente, sino también celebraremos una reforma constitucional donde llevamos el tema del recurso hídrico y la provisión del recurso hídrico como norma constitucional, lo que para nosotros es muy importante el día de hoy. Y concluyo diciendo, don Juan Pablo, muchísimas gracias por sus buenos deseos en las nuevas funciones del que.
Muchas gracias, ministro. Y quería empezar este diálogo consultándole cómo está viendo Costa Rica, que tiene un plan de decarbonización supremamente importante en este momento, el rol de la naturaleza y de las soluciones de la naturaleza como parte integral de ese plan. Y a mí me gustaría un poco que le cuentes a la audiencia los pilares de ese plan que tienen un poco la visión no solo de ciudades con transporte sostenible, energía renovable, por supuesto, pero también cómo incorporar la naturaleza como parte de ese plan.
Con muchísimo gusto. Hace exactamente un año presentamos nuestro, y yo diría, modestia aparte, muy ambicioso plan de descarbonización con una visión hacer cero emisiones al año 2050. Aún lo anterior, ya Costa Rica, sin que esto haya obedecido a una visión política claramente planificada, veníamos descarbonizando sectores importantes en nuestra economía, particularmente el sector eléctrico y el sector forestal uso de suelo. Costa Rica en un par de décadas pasó de producir el 60% de su electricidad con agua y un 40% con combustible fósil a pasar casi un 100% el día de hoy con fuentes renovables y algunas de ellas alternativas. Y en el mismo periodo pasamos de tener uno de los niveles de deforestación y cambio de uso del suelo más altos del mundo per cápita a revertir la deforestación y duplicar la cobertura forestal en términos netos. Por supuesto, el tema de pérdida de biodiversidad y erosión genética siguen siendo un problema, pero en términos macro y de tendencias, revertimos el proceso de deforestación, lo que nos ha generado una circunstancia muy favorable, ya que los dos sectores más grandes a nivel mundial en generación de emisiones hoy no nos generan emisiones en Costa Rica. Ese es el antecedente que tenemos al entrar a nuestro plan de descarbonización. Y aquí dos cosas me parece que son muy importantes antes de entrar a comentarte el plan de descarbonización, es que el llegar a hacer cero emisiones en uso de suelo, el llegar a hacer energía renovable en el sector eléctrico, requirió una fuerte inversión en la transformación. El Banco Interamericano fue un socio estratégico en esa transición que hizo Costa Rica, particularmente en el sector eléctrico, donde nos ayudó. En el proceso en donde llegamos a duplicar cobertura forestal y 100% energía renovable, la economía en Costa Rica en ese mismo periodo se triplicó y se duplicó la población. Aquí creo yo que es muy importante, Juan Pablo, el mensaje intrínseco, la descarbonización de estos dos sectores, y vuelvo a reiterar, los más importantes a nivel mundial, no fue un freno para el crecimiento y la prosperidad en Costa Rica. Una lección fuertísima que muchos entendemos en Costa Rica, tal vez no todos, y la tarea es diseminar este finding importante, y ese es el antecedente que tenemos nosotros en Costa Rica para plantearnos, en donde el Banco Interamericano ha sido un socio fundamental, nuestro plan de descarbonización. Hoy, con el avance en estos dos sectores y entendiendo que fue beneficioso desde el punto de vista ahora nos concentramos en 4 o 5 otros sectores donde la tarea por descarbonizar es muy fuerte. Y sin duda, el sector transporte es nuestro gran reto, pero tenemos la gran ventaja, don Juan Pablo, de que si producimos nuestra energía eléctrica con fuentes renovables, lo lógico es movernos lo más rápido posible en la electrificación del sector de transporte, sea transporte público, individual o el que sea, y que movernos rápidamente. Y después tenemos los sectores de transporte público, de infraestructura, sector agrícola, sector de desechos sólidos, y en el sector forestal tenemos todavía metas importantes, particularmente la meta de pasar de 52% de cobertura forestal total en el territorio nacional a un 60% al año 2030, sin que ese aumento hasta 60% de cobertura forestal total del territorio implica una competencia en donde producimos nuestros alimentos, donde producimos nuestra electricidad y en las ciudades donde vivimos.
Carlos Manuel, el banco, como los demás bancos de desarrollo, hemos tratado de reaccionar muy rápido durante la crisis del COVID para fortalecer los sistemas de salud, darle liquidez a los países, poder ayudar a las pequeñas y medianas empresas. Y estamos empezando a hablar de cómo la urgencia y el rescate va a empezar a articularse con una recuperación y cómo esa recuperación tiene que ser sostenible no solo desde lo ambiental, desde lo social. ¿Qué lecciones aprendidas de todo lo que nos acabas de contar estás viendo para una recuperación en la cual el medio ambiente sea uno de los ejes en crear un nuevo normal?
Bueno, esta pregunta es una excelente pregunta, don Juan Pablo, compleja, porque en estos momentos el nivel de estrés social y la recesión económica que apenas estamos empezando, generan condiciones para que el abordaje político de los planes de recuperación económica se centren en soluciones. Y yo digo soluciones mágicas de corto plazo. No existen soluciones mágicas de corto plazo, pero esa es la ambición de los políticos. Aquí tenemos que, en ese contexto, entender que la inversión en estos planes de estímulo, en estos planes de recuperación, tienen que tener objetivos de muy corto plazo, pero objetivos de mediano plazo que no nos desvíen de nuestras metas de biodiversidad, conservación de naturaleza, uso del suelo, de plásticos, mares y de descarbonización. Y mi temor es, sin duda, que estos planes de recuperación económica pongan de lado ya toda esa agenda climática y de conservación, la pongan de lado y que la percepción sea primero nos recuperamos económicamente y después volvemos a retomar la agenda de la sostenibilidad. Eso es una preocupación. La preocupación es sin duda que estos planes de recuperación se centren exclusivamente en una inversión en infraestructura como una manera de generar empleo y dinamizar la economía, y eso nos va a llevar a mantener actividades como el tema de minería y de hidrocarburos. Ese es el modelo que tenemos que distanciarnos y tenemos que distanciarnos muy rápidamente. Entonces, nosotros como comunidad tenemos que entender cómo podemos hacer propuestas muy concretas que sean inversiones de mediano plazo. Y yo creo que el mejor argumento es el siguiente, Juan Pablo. Nosotros tenemos que decir, esta es una crisis muy fuerte, tenemos que reconocer la vulnerabilidad de la sociedad global y que la inversión en la recuperación económica tiene que prepararnos para la siguiente crisis. La siguiente crisis va a ser la recesión económica. Esa recesión económica va a generar un malestar social generalizado por la inequidad que tenemos en el planeta. Y detrás de eso vienen dos grandes crisis, la crisis de pérdida de biodiversidad y la crisis de cambio climático. Esas dos últimas crisis, pérdida de biodiversidad y cambio climático, tienen el gran problema que a diferencia de COVID llega a un pico y ahí está a bajar la línea, la crisis de biodiversidad, la crisis climática no hay picos, hay puntos de no. Entonces, hoy tenemos el contexto de reactivar nuestras economías y resolver el problema de desempleo de la gente. Tenemos que, un segundo, tenemos que plantear los temas de mediano plazo que nos ayuden a que esa agenda de la sostenibilidad no quede relegado a un segundo plazo.
Totalmente de acuerdo, Carlos Manuel. Estamos todos haciendo un esfuerzo para que la recuperación desde el punto de vista ambiental sea sostenible, pero pase totalmente por reconocer, como bien lo decías, la necesidad de recuperación económica, de crecimiento y de crear resiliencia social. En esto mencionabas el tema de transporte, crear cada vez sistemas de transporte en las ciudades que nos ayuden a mantener una buena calidad del aire, pero al mismo tiempo pensar en cómo crear empleo. Ustedes fueron pioneros del tema de pago por servicios ambientales, el tema de manejo de cuencas en este momento va a ser prioritario para crear también empleo rural, el tema de manejo de manglares y obras de manejo de zonas costeras en el Caribe, ahora que pronto se viene la época de huracanes, también puede generar empleo. Así que me pareció muy bueno ese vínculo de tener muy claro que en este momento parte de la recuperación tiene que ser generar empleo, generar crecimiento, pero hacerlo de una manera mucho más sostenible que nos ayude a crear un nuevo normal. Con esto te hago la última pregunta, Carlos Manuel, y es, ¿qué lecciones le recomendarías, de acuerdo a las lecciones aprendidas que tú has tenido en Costa Rica y con el liderazgo que están teniendo en la coalición de ambición de la naturaleza, para incluir en los planes gubernamentales, inclusive en los planes territoriales, el tema de biodiversidad? ¿Qué sugerencias le darías tú a los policymakers que nos acompañan y a las diferentes personas?
Muchas gracias, Juan Pablo. Y nada más decirte que se me fue el video porque el administrador del Zoom lo quitó, entonces tal vez él me pueda ayudar a volver a restablecer el video. Nuestra coalición de alta ambición por la naturaleza y la gente busca básicamente en el contexto de las negociaciones de la Convención de Diversidad Biológica cumplir con la recomendación de los científicos. En el reporte IPBES nos indican que para poder mantener la diversidad biológica, revertir la tendencia de pérdida de esta y disfrutar de los beneficios que nos da la naturaleza, y estos no son beneficios suntuosos, son fundamentales, tenemos que proteger el 30% del océano y los planetas. Y en ese sentido, la coalición busca una decisión en el post-2020, en las negociaciones del CBD post-2020, que verdaderamente reflejen esa recomendación de la comunidad científica, que es exactamente lo que estamos haciendo en la Convención de Cambio Climático al hacer la revisión de las NDCs para que éstas respondan al 1.5, que es lo que la comunidad científica nos recomienda, ya que los 2 grados, llegar a 2 grados al 2050 generaría impactos irreversibles. Aquí es en donde yo creo, don Juan Pablo, que tenemos que, y puede ser que lo que yo le vaya a decir parezca old school. Yo ya tengo 60 años, entonces puede ser que lo que yo diga lo asocien a una idea old school. Pero sí hay algo que ha funcionado bien en la conservación y la protección de la biodiversidad, son nuestras áreas silvestres protegidas. Y han venido a menos la función y el rol de esta herramienta exitosa de conservación que se llama las áreas silvestres protegidas. 2/3 partes de las áreas silvestres protegidas en los países en vías de desarrollo son de papel, no existen. No hay un plan de manejo, no hay un presupuesto, no hay funcionarios. Entonces, una manera costo eficiente para poder avanzar en tener los beneficios de las soluciones basadas en naturaleza es en consolidar las áreas silvestres protegidas, los corredores biológicos, y a esto tenemos otro tema, tenemos que complementarlo con el poder garantizar que las comunidades indígenas y campesinas en las zonas periféricas de las áreas silvestres protegidas se les reconozcan sus derechos. El derecho a la tierra, pero también derechos intrínsecos a los recursos naturales, como son derechos a los recursos bioquímicos y genéticos, el derecho al carbón forestal, es fundamental. Nada vamos a lograr consolidando áreas silvestres protegidas, propiedad del Estado o las privadas, si no garantizamos plenos derechos, que es un derecho y una reivindicación de las poblaciones campesinas e indígenas. Esos 2 elementos, áreas protegidas, derechos, me parece que son fundamentales, algo que hemos trabajado por 45 años, una tarea que no concluimos, que está pendiente y que yo creo que el dividendo que generaría en el corto plazo inversiones en este tema me parece importante. De nuevo, sueno como old school, ¿verdad? Pero es algo que ha funcionado y que tenemos que replantearnos porque hablamos de carbono forestal, hablamos de Red Plus, hablamos de soluciones basadas en naturaleza, que es un término que tal vez esta comunidad lo entiende, pero la que está afuera no lo entiende, y creo yo que posicionar fuertemente el tema de áreas silvestres protegidas es una tarea imperiosa.
Totalmente de acuerdo, ministro. Oiga, disculpas por lo del video, creo que lo hicieron para mejorar mucho más el sonido, se le escuchó muy bien en la última intervención. Y reforzando su punto de vista, parte de lo que estamos viendo, que inclusive lo vi en un artículo suyo, es que mucha gente está empezando a de las ciudades regresar al campo por la crisis económica que está generando el COVID y también porque se sienten mucho más seguros desde el punto de vista salud. Así que se nos viene un gran reto y es cómo hacia futuro tener planes de desarrollo integral para zonas rurales que tengan temas de salud, de educación, de generación de empleo, también acompañado por temas de agroforestal, silvopastoril, totalmente sostenibles, que sea parte de la solución para tener, como usted decía, cada día áreas protegidas mucho más sólidas. Ministro, yo le quería agradecer, sé cómo está su agenda, sé que está con el presidente Alvarado en este momento en un Parque Nacional de Costa Rica, así que en nombre del banco y de todas las personas que lo están escuchando, quería darle las gracias y voy a pasar a la segunda panelista.
Muchísimas gracias a usted, Juan Pablo, y nada más déjeme darle 30 segundos.
Claro que sí.
Un tema muy importante. Yo de niño aprendí a coger café, a ordeñar vacas y a montar a caballo. Y mis niños no lo hicieron y mis nietos van a ser totalmente urbanos. El asocio ético moral y esa conexión entre la naturaleza y el ser humano del futuro es un gran reto que tenemos. Nadie va a defender la naturaleza si no la conoce y si no la aprecia. Por lo tanto, tenemos una tarea muy, muy grande de que no solamente hacer más verdes y sostenibles nuestras ciudades, sino que la biodiversidad la tengamos también en nuestras ciudades y nuestros espacios urbanos. Y aquí el banco es un gran líder en este proceso. Muchas gracias.
No, usted, ministro, vea, con la división de ciudades del banco estamos viendo cada vez más cómo la naturaleza va a ser inclusive fundamental para ir recuperando la confianza entre los ciudadanos. Algo que hemos perdido por el COVID nos asusta, inclusive el contacto. Así que, como usted bien lo dice, el contacto con la naturaleza en las ciudades y en las zonas rurales va a tener un rol súper importante para que como sociedad vayamos poco a poco creando confianza. Bueno, I'm going to switch to Emma Donnelly, Deputy Director from the UK. Emma, welcome to this event. Happy Environment Day. I would like to thank you not only for being with us, but for all the support that you are providing to the region, not only through the IDB, but directly support to different countries. And I would like to start asking you, how is the UK government incorporating nature-based solutions also into the different recovery plans?
Thank you very much, Juan Pablo, and thank you particularly for the invitation to join such an esteemed panel for this discussion today, and happy Environment Day to everybody who's dialed in. So you asked how the UK is going to prioritise nature-based solutions as part of our economic recovery plan. Well, the first really important step is that the Prime Minister has made it very clear that that's what we will do. So he joined the Secretary General's meeting on financing for development last week, and he set out very clearly that the UK will be working to promote a fair, green and resilient recovery, both globally and at home in the UK. So I think it's important you know, that we reflect on that level of ambition and that clarity, and then of course the really hard part is working out how to do it. And we have lots of tools at our disposal, as I'm sure many participants on this call know. We've already developed our land management system to replace the agricultural subsidies that were provided to farmers when we were part of the EU. And you know, the concept behind that is very much paying farmers for environmental services. We're also bringing back our environment bill, which was delayed because of COVID-19 and the fact that Parliament wasn't sitting for some time, but we'll be setting out in the environment bill an ambitious set of plans to put nature-based solutions at the heart of our recovery. But I think, you know, the most important thing that we need to do actually right now is respond to Minister Rodriguez's very sort of well-timed political challenge. You know, around the world, countries, people are going to be really hurting as we enter into the recession that's going to follow the COVID-19 pandemic. And you know, everybody will be looking to recover as quick as possible and to generate jobs as quickly as possible. And what we need to do is to demonstrate that there doesn't have to be a choice between environmentally friendly and sustainable investments and investments which generate growth and jobs. And I think the Minister has shown us in Costa Rica that there doesn't have to be that trade-off. There's also interesting evidence from countries like South Korea, which in its recovery after the 2008 financial crash was able to generate actually a lot more jobs in forestry and other environmental sectors than through kind of traditional grey industrial investment. So I think, you know, we need to recognise that now is the time to really make the economic case for environmental recovery as well as the environmental case. And I think all of us need to be desperately engaged in learning from one another and not reinventing the wheel, and picking up examples from elsewhere of how we can do this well. I mean, we know some of the ideas. We know that forestry will be important. We know that environmental protection in the UK, protecting our wetlands, protecting our peat bogs, you know, they're very labour intensive. They will provide work. And we need to just make sure that when the focus becomes absolutely sort of dead on creating jobs, restarting the economy, that people don't forget that actually these type of interventions are the ones that can deliver. So just to summarise, it's really important. The UK is committed to a fair, green and resilient economy. We now quickly need to gather evidence and learn lessons from elsewhere of what works. And I think we'll be looking to you, Juan Pablo, and your colleagues in the IDB to help us gather that evidence. And then we just need to crack on with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. You mentioned a key part that is making the economic case for nature-based solutions for biodiversity. A couple of years ago, back to 2007, Nicholas Stern produced the Stern Report that was very useful to position the economic importance of climate into the Ministries of Finance. Now we have the Coalition for Ministers of Finance that is going to play a key role for this. And making a parallel of that, I would like to first congratulate you and the UK government for the effort that you are doing together with the Treasury, with the UK Treasury, to do the Dasgupta report. That I think making a parallel would be a very good study to make the case for Ministers of Finance and Planning about, as you said, the economic importance of biodiversity. I would like to ask you to share with the audience what is the Dasgupta report about, and how do you see this report being a key part for our decision makers now that we have the stimulus packages and recovery packages from the Ministry of Finance?
Thank you, Juan Pablo. And before I start, I should say that thanks are due much more to you and colleagues in the IDB for all of the work that you've put into the Dasgupta review so far, and all the great intellectual input from across the IDB. For those who don't know, you sit on the advisory panel and have been your input has been enormously appreciated in steering the work of the review. But for those who aren't familiar with it, I mean, it's basically, as you said, Juan Pablo, it's hoping to do for biodiversity what the Nicholas Stern review did for climate change, and to wake people up to the fact that this is not just a fluffy, nice, tree-hugging issue that shouldn't really be the centre of everyone's concerns, but this is actually the central question for our times: how we envisage the economy, how we conceptualise economic growth, and how we live within the limits of the Earth's resources. And I would say that, you know, when the Dasgupta review was launched, and, you know, up to 3 months ago, it was enormously timely and important. But now, as we're, you know, still in the throes of this terrible global pandemic, it feels to me even more timely, because, you know, at one level, COVID-19 and the coronavirus has been the most horrible example of what happens when humans don't respect the environment and the nature that we live in. And, you know, this is not just a tragedy on a huge scale for the health of millions of people and all the many people who've sadly died. It's an economic tragedy. So, you know, we need to be taking account of this cost. And frankly, you know, we haven't been up until now. We haven't been costing in the risks of the damage that we're doing to the natural environment. So, as you know very well, Juan Pablo, the interim report of the Dasgupta review was released a few weeks ago, and I'd commend it to anyone who hasn't read it yet. And what it does, in my mind, is really signal what a seminal piece of work this will be in shifting the paradigm of how we think about the economy and its place within the natural world. And I think, you know, to me, you know, just sort of 5 insights that I think are really key. Firstly, nature's an asset, just like human capital, just like productive capital, but we've been managing it appallingly. And so we really need to wake up and start managing that asset. And the second insight, which I think is really profound, is that the human economy isn't external to the natural world, it's embedded within it. And so, you know, we can't continue to think about the economic growth in terms of just kind of ever growing, ever, you know, increasing growth levels, as though that's completely disconnected from the planet on which we all depend. And then Dasgupta's identified this really key concept of impact inequality. So the gap between the demands we're making of the planet and the supply of the natural resources that we depend on. And his calculation is that actually our level of demand requires 1.7 Earths to meet it. And we don't have 1.7 Earths, we've only got 1. So something has to give, and it needs to be the way that we as a human society interact with our natural environment. And that brings us on to looking at patterns of human consumption, patterns of waste management, and how we can manage our economy in a much more sustainable way that doesn't place the same stresses on the national environment. And then finally, you know, he points to the fact that, you know, GDP doesn't really work as a measure of success once you recognize these fundamental truths about, you know, the embeddedness of human society and economy within nature. To have a concept of growth and sort of economic and societal success that exists independent of nature doesn't really make sense. And as ever, you know, the thing that you're measuring incentivizes your behavior, and if that is the measure of our success around the world, it will continue to incentivize exactly the behavior that's increasing risks to human society and the costs that go along with that. So, you know, I think COVID-19, I would hope, will be a real scary wake-up call to us all around the world, and I hope that the Dasgupta review will be a big part of articulating what's wrong with the economic model that we've got and what we need to do to reset that. I suppose my only kind of slight proviso at the end is that we really need to make sure that the conclusions of the report are implementable, and that collectively we translate them into kind of policy actions and policy options that political leaders around the world can pick up, because it really would be a huge lost opportunity right now to have all of this thinking and really quite groundbreaking kind of paradigm shift going on if we don't take the opportunity to adapt our policies and shape and reshape our economy accordingly. So yes, in sum, I think it's potentially hugely influential, but we absolutely need to make sure that we make the most of that opportunity. Thanks, Juan Pablo.
No, thank you, Emma. And to finalize, following on many of the issues that you mentioned about the report, where do you see the most important opportunities to start mainstreaming nature-based solution globally in these COVID and post-COVID area?
So, I mean, I've got to be careful how I say this, because obviously nobody would wish the recession and the hardship that's coming on people around the world, and it's going to be really difficult. But actually, we've needed to shift our economy and our economic model for a long time that is very, very difficult to do when in the good times, when the economy is booming, because people think, well, it ain't broke, we don't need to fix it. Actually, it's when we're all being forced to focus on recovery and rebuild our economy, that's where the opportunity is to really build in the big institutional shifts that we need to make and the systemic shifts to our economy. So I think in a slightly counterintuitive way, the scale of the challenge is in itself an opportunity, because it calls for really radical solutions. As I mentioned earlier, you know, there are examples of what works. We can look to Costa Rica, we can look to countries like South Korea, we can look at all the experience of implementing nature-based solutions around the world. And we also have a series of really powerful global moments next year. There's the UN Financing for Development Conference, there's the COP15 on biodiversity, there's COP26 towards the end of the year, which the UK and Italy are co-hosting in Glasgow. So, you know, we have these built-in opportunities for leaders to come together and make the commitments that they need to a green recovery. I think the two big challenges we're going to face are this sort of almost psychological reluctance to embrace nature-based solutions. And I think, you know, people will inevitably, as they're faced with a huge challenge, retreat into what they know and go for growth at any cost. So I think overcoming those misperceptions with as much evidence and track record as we can is going to be vital. The other big problem is going to be the lack of resources. Global aid levels will inevitably reduce because they're generally tied to national income, and national income is going to go down around the world. And we know from past recessions that that's when private investment becomes much more risk averse and retreats into what they see as safe investments. I would hope that there's more brave, innovative investors out there than there were a few years ago who will see the opportunities and see that actually our concept of risk should be rather turned on its head at the moment. But I think the reality is that we're going to have to look to public bodies and multilateral organisations and donors to foot the bill, and that's going to be a tough ask in the coming months and years. So in terms of our response, I tried to come up with three kind of easy to remember, you know, catchphrases, and as is often the case, I came up with two and the third didn't quite work. But firstly, we need speed. We need to respond quickly with kind of shovel-ready projects and policies and examples for government, and very importantly, ministers of finance as well as ministers of environment, and we need to be sharing those very, very fast. We need specificity, so broad statements about nature-based solutions won't cut it. We need to be talking about this forestry project or this opportunity to safeguard an environment or an ecosystem that will generate jobs. And then finally, we need sources of finance. That's the one that doesn't quite fit, you can tell, but we need to find a way to finance investment in nature-based solutions. We need to do it fast. That's it from me, Juan Pablo.
No, thank you, Emma. And the last part that you mentioned is a very good bridge to the next two panelists. You talk about resources. We emphasize the importance of the ministers of finance in including these into the recovery packages. And I totally agree what you just said. GDP, traditional GDP accounting needs to be totally reviewed. It's not including everything that we need for the creation of a new normal. However, we need to recognize that we're going to face very limited fiscal space and fiscal constraints in many of our countries. And that's why the role of the private sector is going to be critical. Nick Stern is talking about not public to private partnership, but private to public in the recovery packages. And that's why I would like to turn to the next two panelists. Our next panelist is Philippe Zaouati. Philippe is the CEO of Mirova, a company that has been a pioneer in investing in nature-based solutions. So Philippe, it's a pleasure having you here. Thank you for joining us from Paris. And I would like to start asking you, how do you briefly tell us about your portfolio and your leadership of Mirova investing in these areas, in nature-based solutions?
Thank you very much for the invitation. And I mean, you know, we have created Mirova 6 years ago as an investment management company focused on sustainable investments. And so at the beginning, sustainable investments was mainly investing in listed equity and green bonds. But then we started to think about, I mean, really investing in projects and in impact investing, moving from ESG to impact investing. But doesn't mean that ESG is not good. I mean, ESG is good, of course, but we also need to have direct investments and to prove impact. So that's what we have really tried to do in different areas. The first one was renewable energy and energy transition. But then 4 years ago, I met with Monique Barbu, who was the Secretary General of the UNCCD at that time, and she wanted to create an investment fund focused on how to tackle the degradation of land and to restore land. And she really wanted to have a private partner to do this, and I think it was really a very good move. So we started to work on this 4 years ago and to start building a pipeline. And then we partnered with a company called Altelia 3 years ago, and now Altelia is also part of our platform. And so now we have a platform to invest in sustainable land, forest, and also ocean assets. So we have gathered about €500 million invested in these assets, and with clearly the objective to create impact on the ground in different countries. So we invest in mainly, most of our investments today are in Latin America, but we also invest in Asia and in Africa. It's really the beginning of an asset class. That's what it is. And we need to create it as an asset class. That means that we need to also to embark and to attract private investors in this asset class. And so that was exactly the setup of the different funds that we are managing. Most of them are public-private partnerships, including, money coming from governments, and especially money that we use to de-risk the assets. And so, we work. The UK government, for example, is one of the investors in this junior share. But there is others, like USAID and other development bank, of course. And this is very important because these assets, we can now find some really interesting investments and economically viable investments. But of course, the level of returns of these investments is too low if we put it alongside the risk that is bearing in this kind of investment. And it's very difficult to attract private money in this, even if there are more and more institutional investors like insurance company, pension funds, which are really keen to invest in these new assets. But they need to have I would say, a risk-return profile which is comparable to the market standards. And so to do this, the combination of public money de-risking the assets and private money coming on top of this is very powerful. And so that's it. That's the story today. And I think really there is very a huge work to do on this. And one of the issues is that the players in this space are, I would say, too small. Mirova is a good one, but we are probably one of the biggest, and we are small. So we need also to attract the big ones, the big investors. We have to explain that what we have done on the renewable energy and carbon the last 10, 15 years, we can do it. Hopefully, we can do it faster in this area in nature-based solutions.
Thank you, Philippe. And as a follow-up, how is the crisis right now impacting your portfolio in general, but in particular, these investments vis-a-vis the other sectors that you are covering?
Of course, I mean, this economy, I mean, is suffering and will suffer exactly the same as everything. I mean, because we are entering into a recession, and when you invest in a, in a company with, for example, which is doing a sustainable fishery in the Caribbean, they will suffer because they have less client than a couple of months ago. It's very important that we continue to invest in this company, that the investment funds which are in this space don't stop just radically the investments. We have to maintain our trust in this economy, in this company, to continue to fuel all this economy, maybe more, and so that's the first point. So, of course, the second point is also that we are Europe-based. I mean, most of our teams are based in Paris and London. We also have teams on the ground, but not that much. I mean, we have a couple of people in Lima and a couple of people in Sao Paulo in Brazil. So, but I think that we will probably need to change a little bit the way we operate in the coming years. We probably will need to put more people on the ground and probably less in the headquarters, because it will, I mean, basically it will be probably more difficult to travel. And even if it's not more difficult, I mean, we have learned a lot in this crisis. We have learned how to work remotely, and so, I mean, we can, I mean, have trust to people who are in these countries in Latin America, Asia, and Africa, and so I think it will be something very important in the way we operate in the future.
Thank you, Philippe, and that's something that I think all of us are learning. I was talking before starting with the minister, and I said, listen, all the models of operation from all of our institutions needs to be closer to the client, to the society in general. And just all the trips that we're avoiding in terms of emissions, but also cost, is a lesson learned for all of us for the future. So thank you for that comment, Philippe. And as an impact investor, I'm very curious to ask the following. Many of our countries, not only Latin America and the Caribbean, but developing world in general, due to the crisis and fiscal impacts and everything, we could be riskier in terms of grading from different agencies. For the future, in the coming years, what is going to be the key variable for you as an impact investor? It will be only risk, or biodiversity, sustainability in general will play an important role in that decision?
No, I think, clearly, we have to work on both sides. I mean, risk and opportunity. Risks and opportunities. That's exactly what we have done on for climate and on carbon side as well. It's easier to attract investors, and it's easier to convince companies at the beginning when you speak about risk, because this is something that everybody understand. I mean, very rapidly. If you speak, for example, to a big multinational company, they understand very clearly the risk that they have in terms of the supply chain. How can they securize their supply chain in the future, and especially a good and sustainable supply chain. So they see the risk very rapidly. But if we, as investors, if we are not able to transform this risk into opportunities, then we wouldn't have do the job completely. So I think we need to do both. We need to create a pipeline. That means really transforming and putting at scale. One of the issues is clearly that there are a lot of very small projects very interesting blueprints everywhere, but it's very difficult to put all these projects at scale. And so we need to create all this value chain from the beginning, from the small projects to medium projects, and then to project at scale. And to do this, we need different tools. What we do with our public-private partnership is really working on the middle side. I mean, the projects which are really existing. You have a blueprint, but you want to increase it. Then we can put this public-private partnership into this kind of project. But the smaller one, what we have is we have a technical assistance facility, and then we use this technical assistance facility to help this small project to become investable. And then the third stage that we still not have today is really putting this at scale, which will need probably to use much more market products like green bonds, but maybe nature bonds. Now we have green bonds, we have social bonds. Why not? I mean, a new category of nature bonds, which could help to really leverage all the efforts that we have already made, and to put this really at scale. So really, this is important to work on all this value chain. And that means creating the opportunities. And the risk part, the de-risking part, is also very different in the different areas. We don't need a lot of de-risking for the smaller project. We need grants. It's not very different. We need grants in order to help them to become investable. The second part, there we need a lot of de-risking from public banks and governments. And the third part will be a market base. It will be there when we will have proven that the second phase is okay. So I see this really like the development of a new asset class with different steps, different tools, different kind of partnerships. But this is a journey that we have to follow.
Many thanks, Philippe. And now I would like to close the panel with Denise Hills. Denise is the Global Sustainability Director of Natura. And Denise, muito obrigado. Thank you for joining us today from Sao Paulo. Many people is talking about bioeconomy and the sustainable use of biodiversity. And I think Natura is the best example in the region to show how you are using biodiversity in a sustainable way, but linked to what we were talking about, economic growth and employment, also as an example of employment generation in not only our region, worldwide. So welcome, and I would like you to start by sharing the business model of Natura and how was your supply chain affected by COVID-19.
Thank you, Juan Pablo. Thank you for all of you. Obrigada em português, gracias em espanhol. It's a great opportunity to share the expertise and the knowledge that inside Natura. We've been using this opportunity. Natura is a business dedicated to cosmetics, and well known as a great company that produce their business incorporating bioeconomy, biotechnology, regarding especially the Amazon, and as a very nice example in how you could bring a new development economic model, including social and environmental aspects as a part of the decision-making process, as a part of the source of business opportunity, innovation, and technology. Natura is a Brazilian company which starts 50 years ago, and nowadays is a main part of a huge group which acquires Avon recently, and The Body Shop, an iconic company regarding in England, regarding that starts the implementation or the activism regarding impact and cruelty-free, and including Aesop. And nowadays we are a group which has impact in more than 100 countries. But using Amazon, one of the most iconic forests in terms of preserving the biodiversity, our committed with the region generates in the last 20 years, one of the most iconic and important lines of the businesses based on sustainable development and inclusive economy alternatives for the region, promoting the Brazilian biodiversity as a fount, as a source of employing technology and developing high-tech products. It made because the direct relationship between Natura and the local population regards as an opportunity to develop a new ingredients based on the knowledge that the population, the community has, establishing a fair trade approach in a long-term relationship that allows us to have access to knowledge and to a source coming from more than 40 ingredients nowadays that take parts of our product, but at the same time generates a preservation of the forest, an increase in terms of wage, in terms of health, in terms of quality, in terms of a real social biodiversity economy into a vision, and it's made by businesses, which is quite new and unusual, but it's not new for us. Natura is a company that generates the products by this kind of source of income. And at the same time, we preserve more than 1 million hectares for the forest, which means 12 times the size of the city of São Paulo, just because we are operating with 39 communities inside of the Amazon in the last 20 years. And including the part of the recent times, living with the COVID crisis nowadays in a days like this, it allows us not only to guarantee right away the access for this community into a safe and healthy way of still doing businesses without contaminate with the COVID, expanding our benefits for this community, but in the other hand, it's a source of partnership with the other companies that are operating into the region in order to guarantee that the maintenance of this group of sales, of sourcing, of way of operating, and in partnership with global organizations like Global Compact, we generate more resource in order to guarantee the health and to guarantee the business that we've been developing for the last more than 20 years. And it's very important because during the crisis, you have the opportunity to have the approach of courage, bravery, or the approach of the opportunity instead of the only looking risks, because there is risks. But you have the ability and the experience to operate in things like that, and considering a biodiversity as a part of your value as a company, and not only as a part of your value chain. You generate businesses that has long-term perspective, that include people as part of the preservation, as part of the regeneration, the positive impact, and you generate the same feeling in terms of the population, in terms of the consumption, because people know Natura as part of a company which preserves the Amazon and what represents a very nice way to doing businesses inside of the forest with preservation, guaranteeing the income of more than 500 families, which depends of the forest, but at the same time has the opportunity to live there, generating more technology in partnership with us. And it allows us to have a very nice example in terms of businesses and in terms of a new circular economy, a new way to approach, and including allows us to be a company like this nowadays. We start as a Brazilian company. We are a lot well known in Latin America, and especially in Latin America, Natura by people is very well known as a businesses which preserves, and just because preserves the founts of the resources like the Amazon has the expertise of this, has the ability to bring them opportunities from the forest, not only Brazilian Amazon, but Peru, Colombia, and the others, technology that values biodiversity, not has an approach that we are going to source into a biodiversity. Biodiversity for us is a source of inspiration, technology, business opportunity, business model, fair trade, developing the society, and in some ways we've been in contact during the pandemic as to help the other companies, government, public, and how you can deal with this, how can we bring the more donations and source for health in this ambience and this ecosystem, and to share the way that we develop this kind of business model in order to generate more partnership and more concern about the opportunity that we have in terms of the Amazon instead of the crisis or risks that people normally see on the television or outside the biome, because we have a lot of expertise and we had a long-term relationship with the region, and that allows us to be a company that generates businesses based on bioeconomy, and could be a very nice example of, okay, we had a way. You don't have to have the same path. You don't have to have the same journey. You don't have to have many, in many ways, learn for 10 years, but we can share the technology, the process, the business model in order to allows us to take part of the other partnerships, groups, and including financial sector, regulators, interdependence, financial, business model in general that allows us not only bring more people inside of this kind of model, but bring other businesses that could inspire ourselves in looking through biodiversity, Amazon, forest, things which are not common sense in a business. Natural capital is not part of accountancy included, as many of you mentioned, but maybe we could be a very nice example, prove it for more than 20 years, that it's possible, profitable, effective in terms of impact, and include, regenerate one of the most wonderful and richful ecosystems that we have. And that include nowadays is preserving our air, our ability of breathe. In many days, the rain that we have inside of the food that we produce, not only here in Brazil, but in many countries. I think that for us is a very proud way to approach ourselves and to tackle ourselves to be more bold in terms of committed with this, showing the example that it's possible, it's profitable, it's reality, it can't be done.
Thank you, Denise. And the Amazon countries and the Amazon region in general has been hit a lot from COVID in terms of health impacts and economic impacts. How are you in this process supporting your supply chain?
We start by extending our benefits normally given to our employees in terms of guarantee the safety, the healthy, the way the donations and money can bring for this community, because you are talking about the communities that you takes like 2 days by boat from the Manaus city to the community 2-3 days. And just because we have the relationship with this community, we have the ability to quickly send them not only information about the contagious, not only donations in terms of soaps, in terms of money that guarantees that they could bring them and could stay safe in their communities. We change completely the way that we catch the resource from them. In order to guarantee that they don't have to come to us bringing the production. And the other way, we're just in the beginning of the moment that to have big contracts renewed, because we are now producing for the next month the most part of the ingredients that we use in our products. We guarantee the contracts for this process and for the next one in bringing them not only the security that they have, the money guarantee, the compromising guarantee, but they have the ability to have enough wage, not only to live, but to stay safe, but in order to guarantee that they can still nowadays taking care of the forest instead of the cut the trees to sell for some money just because they don't have another way to do this now in the middle of the crisis. This is our sustainability approach because for them, we are a kind of partnership. It's not a value chain, it's a relationship management of our partnership. And in the other hand, we are looking through in partnership here inside of Brazil, in many mutual funds, in many organizations like IDB, like Global Compact, make some agreements and generating more opportunities for other companies, which has nowadays an intention to send some money or invest on it. But in terms of Amazon, it represents without us, in some ways, a risk. And in that way, we are operating as a guarantee that if we are guaranteeing that we are gonna have these ingredients for the last 2 years, they could finance these people, they could finance the small cooperatives, small groups, and it's generate a stability in terms of it. In the other hand, we send in partnership with a lot of companies here in Brazil, alcohol and soaps for donation for the hospitals in the region. And in some ways, we act as a part of a group that guarantees that the other donations, not only Natura's donations, could get there to the right place, with the right people, with the right use, just because we have the ability and the knowledge and how to do it. And it was a very interesting way to contribute in the middle of the pandemic like this, using our business knowledge and business relationship as part of a connection that saves lives, that preserves the economy that we are tackling for a long time, and preserves the ability to have a recovery with a more intensive approach with it, instead of go back like 10 years and cutting trees because it will be the only opportunity that communities like that has, instead of selling the fruits or the seeds for people like us, for a group like us. And I think it's very important, but it's been very inspiring taking part of a business that has not only a promise, but an experience in an ecosystem like this. And it allows us to bring others, to invite others, to help them in using our business knowledge as part of the incrementation, as part of the inclusive approach of business in the region.
Thank you, Denise, and congratulations, because when we talk about developing a more resilient society, exactly, this is a very good example of that. Is how you are, through the value chain, not only using in a sustainable way biodiversity, but even more important, protecting the people that makes that possible. Last question for you, Denise. When I was asking Philippe about beyond risk, environmental, social issues as a key criteria for investment, many corporates in private sector are seeing every day more that good practices in ESG, environment, social, and governance, is key for attracting investment. And I would like to ask you, how do you see that? And in general, how streamlining or having a joint accreditation could be useful? And beyond that, how are you doing now the certification and everything virtually with no possibility to travel?
Yes, very nice question for nowadays, and including to think about the things that we are practicing now that could help us for the next future, because it's more interesting and more possible, and we don't have an opportunity yet, just because maybe we don't have a crisis that send us all to home. To think about that is possible in a short time, And let's think about to maintain maybe the next COP conference in something like this. And I think it's a very nice way. I think our contribution in terms of it, in my experience, the risk management side, looking through risks regarding climate change, social, environmental, diversity, inclusion, inequality in general, are quite better specified or included than the opportunity. I think Philippe and Emma tackled this point, pointed it as an opportunity to align the best practices, and maybe the crisis could show us who will be the company which has the real movement, the real commitment in terms of this, and it represents for sure the ability to take part of this movement, and not only this, take part of the next future that should be or could be better by the experience that we are having now. And I think it's a learning process. Sustainability is all a journey. It's always a journey. But the next point is by generating more, maybe regulation, like regulate sharing benefits or taking part of commitments, then Nagoya Protocol, incentivize, incentives aligned, which are not quite good, and learning process by this, and using maybe technology. Nowadays, we can follow the map of the biome by satellites, by drones, and you can bring this as a real comprovation that, okay, you are preserving the forest, still not in having an opportunity to be there. And I think it's a very nice moment to be a little bit bold and use the experience, including the bad one that we are having nowadays, as part of an learning process that moves on, not only business, but people, but finance, but partnership with many of actors, including public finance, not only private finance, in order to address regulation, disclosure, maybe accountability, or in terms of nature, in terms of the real impact that you are generating, in order to have more opportunity to compare in a very nice way who is the real investor or risk-taking in terms of this movement, and who is now looking through, okay, it's good for my reputation, has this kind of the approach. Because for us, it's not it's the opposite of source of risk. It's a source, again, of innovation and opportunity. And I think the long-term perspective of Natura and the results that we have is a very nice example that it can be done in a better way. We generate a lot more impact. R1 here invested on Natura generates 43 reais in terms of economy, in terms of carbon positive impacts, in terms of lots of things, and we could prove this. And maybe we could, in partnership with the other, take part of the many commitments that we have, generate not only an example, a real one, but a way to show this in terms of economics and agreements that allows us to take part of a building system that includes nature of part of the businesses. There's no businesses, there's no people without nature. We are all interconnected. And in some ways we separate things just to study and forget to bring them on together to analyze the opportunity that we all have. We are missing a lot of things, but I think we are having a very nice time to think about it and recover and rebuild things that we know, but we cannot practice it yet in a very good way.
Thank you, Denise. And I think this is a very good way to end the conversation. It's been a very rich exchange from all of you. But as you said, this is a collective effort. We're gonna need from the private side to work with the public side to allow sustainable investments like yours. Companies like you are gonna require every day more impact investors like Philippe to try to sponsor different startups in the Amazon and in different countries of the region. Our role as NDB, working with ministers of finance, planning to mainstream this into different sectors, I think is going to be critical. And also using concessional resources from GEF, from bilateral donors, to de-risking, as Philippe was saying, and allow many investment to come, I think should be part of this recovery. So I would like to first thank all the panelists for joining us today. To apologize for to the audience. I'm just receiving the signal that the time is over. We took more than expected as part of the conversation, but I hope it was rich for you. I've seen in the chats different questions. We've tried to share the different reports and information about different things as part of the chat. But I would like to end just saying to everybody, listen, this is a collective effort. Think as a person, in your family, in your community, in your job, how we can together really create a new normal. As all of you said, this has been very sad, but we're learning every day, and it's an amazing opportunity to do things better. Thank you, and happy Environment Day.
Thank you very much.